So, the Apollo missions of 1969 did break a pretty impressive record. The most expensive movie of all time. We have lots of different kinds of evidence to show you that the moon landing was in fact all fake. So pretty much we have many different types of evidence, from the photographs to the video of them actually landing on the moon, to the actual crosshairs that you can't see because they're behind they're behind some objects when the crosshairs are on the camera lens, so they should be in front of them. So it's going to be interesting to see what you guys come up with, because we can pretty much counter every single thing. And yeah.
Since the dawn of humanity, our species has looked up to the stars and wondered, what if? We've mapped the heavens and created charts, yet for so long even the closest celestial object, our moon, has been blatantly defying our reach. That all changed on July 20th, 1969. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Neil Armstrong was the first, and many more have followed after him. Man has landed on the moon. Do we start with there first?
I think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we go now?
Yeah, for your 4 points.
All right, so Bill Kaysing is a moon hoax investigator. He said, quote, "The whole thing then seemed phony to me. It was an initiative feeling that I was being shown was not real. There's no engine noise in the official NASA footage." And then he said, quote, "The noise level of a rocket engine is up to 140, 150 decibel range, enormously loud. That would be impossible to hear the astronauts' voices as they were coming down to land on the moon, and not the rumbling engine." Kaysing theorized that the landing was in fact filmed in Nevada's desert in Area 51. Russia's satellites revealed warehouses in Area 51 that resembled Hollywood filming warehouses, as well as craters resembling ones to the moon.
Astronauts working for NASA even agreed how much Nevada's desert and the craters around there and all that, the whole setting, totally resembles the land on the moon. So what we figured out in our studies is that the moon landing could easily have just been a giant movie set in Area 51. There are satellite footages of large warehouses that have been seen in Area 51, where just like Hollywood films giant sets in their warehouses, they could have done the same thing. In official footage of the moon landing, there was no exhaust fume whatsoever coming out of the rocket engine nozzle. And during the landing, when the engine nozzle pops up in the footage, it just sort of pops straight up as if it was yanked up by a cable. Why is Area 51 such a secretive base? Possibly one of the many reasons is because the moon landing set is still there. At the time there was the whole space race. The USA was in a race against the Soviets to be the first to land on the moon, and Russia was winning at the time, so they very well would have tried to pull off something like that.
So, despite the deep clarity of space, the stars were missing from the sky and pretty much all of their photographs and their video. There's no air on the moon, which means that the USA flag should not have been waving as it was in the video. There was no blast crater when they went to land on the moon, which there should have been, because to land on the moon, there's pretty much like a huge amount of force, just like enormous amount of force, and there was no dust that even like went to the side, because like the moon was powdery, they said, when they got there, and when they came to land, there wasn't any like dust shooting up. It was just nothing. They just came down, and that was it. So for all 6 of the landings, there was no blast crater at all. And then they said there's footprints that they can see from space on the moon, but if they would have left the place where they would have landed and then left to a different place, from them leaving, the force would have pushed away all the footprints, leaving them into nothing because all the force would have stirred up the dust again, but that never happened.
Next thing is the cameras that were designed for the trip. They were designed to be strapped on the astronauts' chests. That's how they filmed all the footage. You couldn't bend down enough to like see the camera, and there was no viewfinder. So all they could do really to capture the scene was try to aim the camera by swaying their chest around and keeping
Time.
this.
Apollo 11, it's a man success. Apollo 12, a man success. Apollo 13 was a man failure. They went up and they had to come back, but there were no deaths. 14 through 17, Apollo 14 through 17 was a man success. Only 1 of 7 were reported as a failure. Multiple days have been spent on the surface, golf played, football played, pictures taken, etc. As Charlie Duke, an astronaut of the Apollo 16 mission, said, "We have been to the moon 9 times. Why would we fake it 9 times if we faked it?" It is a pertinent question, and it does seem that if you're going to tell a lie, it is far easier to do it once and then stop than keep exaggerating the lie over the course of the next few years. Sooner or later, somebody would have made a mistake to give the game away. The fact that nobody did, again, illustrates the fact that indeed these astronauts did make it to the moon.
And as well, the Soviet Union did not dispute it. At the height of the Cold War, winning the space race represented a massive feather in the ideological cap of the anti-communists. As such, if there had been any way to discredit the United States, you can be sure that the Soviet Union would have found it. The political damage that they could have wrought would have been enormous had they been able to discredit the moon landings. Or for that matter, it is interesting to note that out of the people who have claimed the moon landings were faked, not one of them had any direct involvement with the program. As Dr. James Longuski, a professor of aeronautics and astronautic engineering, has pointed out, the sheer scale of the project would have made it impossible to keep everyone quiet. Over the course of the Apollo project, he estimates that over 400,000 people, or the equivalent of a small city, were involved in working on the project. The odds of every single one of them choosing to keep silent for over 40 years and not producing any evidence or a memoir or any overheard conversation suggesting the landings were faked is another hugely compelling argument.
My next point is one of simple logic. Do you dispute that the International Space Station exists? Because although you keep on talking about the Apollo 11 moon landing, the true name of our debate here is, did man land on the moon? Which I had Josh repeat for me about 4 times, just to make sure that I heard it correctly. So do you dispute that the International Space Station exists, that all the scientific advancements done in those labs never occurred? Because if we can get people into a floating hunk of metal thousands of feet in the air and live there for years, we can find a way to get someone to the moon. And we already have 6 times. Thank you.
Is this 1 minute break?
1 minute break before the open destination.
So there are a couple locations that they filmed and photographed, and NASA claimed these 2 locations to be miles apart from each other. But when the frames were superimposed right over top of each other, they appeared to be the exact same background. The rocks were in the exact same places, but NASA said they were miles apart. So how do you explain that?
I'm just going to start with this first of all. We are not claiming in any way, shape, or form that nothing has been sent to the moon. We're on the same side as you that man has not made it to the moon. So.
And there's also multiple light sources in lots of the photographs, just as it would be in the studio. The photos were lit up in a way and way too clear to be from just a camera flash. So there was, like, you would see, say you would have 2 rocks here. The only light source is from the sun, but then you'd have one shadow coming this way and then another coming this way, for example. So it didn't add up. It didn't make any sense.
Well, However, you keep saying that there has to be another light source. Well, there doesn't. Moon dust, properly called regolith, is pretty reflective, and sunlight hitting the moon isn't passing through and being dulled by an atmosphere. When that unfiltered sunlight hits the regolith, it reflects almost as though off a mirror, shedding light onto anything nearby.
Also, you talked about stars and how you weren't able to see any of the stars. So, reflecting light is the answer to this one as well. The lunar module's skin is by far the brightest object in the image that we see, which means the crew had to keep the aperture of the camera pretty small to actually see anything but a big light blur. If you close the aperture enough, you won't be able to capture the light from all the stars in the lunar sky. Plus, Apollo 14 has plenty of pictures with stars in the sky, if you go out and look at that.
Yes, but as Josh was talking about before, in one of our 4 points, the astronauts, they're in huge heavy suits. You agree, right? And they're they can move, but they're not as mobile as us now, of course.
They even had to have a counterweight on their back so that they didn't
Exactly.
fall.
Yes. So they couldn't bend down enough to see what the camera was looking through, but all the photographs seemed to be clear. And in lots of the photos, the crosshairs, like I said before, we're behind lots of objects when the crosshairs are all on the lenses, and then some of the crosshairs would just fade out and cut out randomly.
But not even all of the cameras were on the there were cameras on the lunar module. There was cameras on the people. They had multiple cameras, so they captured some pretty big shots. Not just it didn't just have to be on their chest.
So what Nathan is implying there is that he's suggesting a lot of the photos might have been totally staged and fake, basically, because there will be things like an astronaut and the crosshairs, which are supposed to be on the lens like they are on cameras, appear half behind the astronaut's head, for example, as if they weren't paying quite close enough attention when producing these photos and stuff.
Except you called it the most expensive movie ever made, right? But if it was the most expensive movie ever made, and you had a whole bunch of people working on this kind of project, don't you think that they would have been smart enough to get past all these little things that you're finding about it? Because all the little things that you're finding about are what-ifs. We're not debating what-ifs, we're debating facts.
Well, yes, and lots of our things are facts. You can't see the crosshairs, and many of the points we have they're facts.
Okay, well, here's a fact to do that. You mentioned that when the rocket came down, there's no sound for it. Well, as in very good
You
movie.
mean creator?
No, I was going to do the sound.
Oh, okay.
As a great movie once put, in space, no one can hear you scream. And that is for the simple fact, in space, there is no sound. So how do you hear the astronauts? Well, that's, of course, they have microphones.
Also, when they were coming off the surface of the Earth, have you ever tried to scream at, what you say, it was around 150 decibels or something like that? A huge number of decibels.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to scream that much in a microphone? Do you think it starts cutting out? Do you think you start hearing it? Probably not.
Yes, but the point is they could hear the astronauts, but they shouldn't have been able to, because the engine noise would have totally taken out their sound, and it would have pretty much muted and dulled them.
Time.
So as you can see, it's pretty common knowledge that man has indeed walked on the moon. It is too big of an accomplishment to be faked. Even if it was, what could they hope to gain by it? Political power? Maybe. But why would we fake it 9 times if that were the case? We have been there, more than once. And one day we'll go there again, even if it takes to infinity and beyond.
On December 11th, 1972, Apollo 17 touched down on the moon. This was not only our final landing, but the last time man left low Earth orbit. If it was easy enough to do in the 60s, why have we not done it again since? Technology has advanced immensely since then. I think we can all agree. We hope that the proof we have shown you today has convinced you that the whole moon landing was fake when you see on footage a simple kick from an astronaut's foot kicks up clouds of dust, and not even a rocket landing will move a speck.
Great debate, you guys.